Hai, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Elliyana Maisarah binti Muhammad Samsol Baha, and today my group will be presenting a topic entitled individual morality. Plato that include Plato, morality, and the harmonious personality. Let's get started. Before that, let me introduce my group members first. The first presenter is me, Elliyana Maisarah binti Muhammad Samsol Baha, with matric number 1911626. The second presenter is Muhammad Nur Iman bin Zakaria with matric number 1913449. And the last presenter, Fatma Zahra binti Abdul Rashid with matric number 1919002. Firstly, let me start my presentation with the introduction of Plato, and let me share a bit of his biography. So, Plato, he lived from 427 to 347 before century. He came from wealthy family, which is aristocratic and politically influential. He is also a student of Socrates. He is the academy founder. The reason why Plato jumped into our presentation today is because, for your information, Plato maintains a virtue-based monistic conception of ethics. That is to say, happiness of well-being eudaimonia is the highest aim of moral thought and conduct. So it is like he contribute this idea towards today's topic. So next, self-realization ethics. What is self-realization ethics? Self-realization ethics is defined as the drive to become what one is capable of at his full potential. As in ethics, it can be proposed that self-realization as the means to achieve a life identified as good by fulfilling some criteria. It is also said that the peak of the happiest man is the man who reaches self-realization, because after self-realization, we will know the purpose of our existence in the world. In addition, in psychology, self-realization is meant to know oneself. On the other hand, in psychology, there is term a self-actualization, that means a man's aspiration to achieve goal and reach his potential. My point here is both self-realization and self-actualization is both this term means the goals or motivation that drive us, and it is related to one another. Also, it helps a person for his self-betterment, because the process of self-realization involves our moral awareness, thoughts, reasoning, judgment, and intuition. Noted that it is not a goal to achieve this self-realization, but it is as a result of an authentic life of a person as a human. Self-realization is cited in ethical theory because it involves the recognition of one's potential, whereby that one should treat everyone, including himself. Looking at the question, what sort of individual that I should strive to become, and as we can see from this question, the self-realized person can be characterized as a high-level self-knowledge person which have an integrated personality that allows him for self-expression, self-acceptance, tolerance, and greater awareness. So, why self-realization matters? Self-realization matters so that we will have the ability to monitor our emotion, and when we achieve self-realization, rather than being controlled by our emotion, we can now use our observation to effectively handle things like our fear, anxiety, and also stress. It also helps us to have skills of letting go the weakening feelings and taking hold of the empowering one instead. Also, it improves our focus and concentration that is guided by our inner goals and values, in which self-realization helps us to easily identify distraction. By getting rid of the meaningless things in life, we can stay committed to what matters the most, which is ourselves. Next, increase our confidence, self-awareness, and also self-esteem. When we have self-realization, we are connected deeply to our truest self, and it will free us from insecurities, worries that are tangled up. Also, it will help us to grasp the truth that we are not defined by it. Lastly, with self-realization, we will become more accepting of ourselves and others. We will be able to be more authentic and can express emotion freely and clearly. At the end, we'll be able to form a deeper relationship and get to spend more time to connect with people rather than to impress. It can be seen that when people do not have strong sense of their own self, they will get easily swayed to live their life. That's all from me. Thank you. I'll pass to the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Fatma Zahra binti Abdul Rashid, metric number 1919002. So for my turn today, I will be presenting and explaining about what is morality. However, before we get to that, let's take a look at this concept of self-actualization and see how it relates to the concept of morality itself. So, by definition, self-actualization actually means living up to one's potential. So, if you notice earlier, Sister Ilya mentioned something about self-realization, which, if you notice, might have the same meaning with self-actualization. But do not get confused, because even if those two terms carries the same definition, the difference is that while self-realization focuses on the transformation and changes from the inner side, self-actualization on the other hand focuses on transformation and changes to the outer side of the self, which means that whatever change is towards the people around them, towards the public, towards the society, and etc. Which is why, according to Nelson 1989, he defined self-actualization as someone that is with high levels of responsibility, authenticity, reflective judgment, empathy for others, autonomy of thought and action, and also self-awareness. And if you notice, the characteristics or traits mentioned are the kind of traits that functions to provide service to the society. For example, empathy or autonomy of thought and action towards others. But how exactly it is related to morality, you might ask? Well, research findings suggested that people who self-actualize might have an advanced levels of moral reasoning compared to those who do not self-actualize, which means that these people might have a better sense of morality compared to us with lower level of moral reasoning. Okay, so now let's go to morality. I'm pretty sure by now everyone is already well versed about morality because they've read up a lot about it, or maybe have already gotten the gist of it. But for the definition, morality is understood as a certain code of conduct that is put forward by a society and also accepted by the said members of that society. So, in a way, we could say that morality is the rules that governs our actions and also our judgment. It basically tell us how to live our lives, the way we live our lives. It helps to judge what is right and what is wrong, according to its sense of morality. However, it is important to note that different societies have different codes of conduct, which means that Society A might not accept Society B's morality because it clashes with their own judgment of what is right and what is wrong. I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say that here, society in Malaysia, we do not condone LGBT behavior. However, in the US, LGBT behavior is, how would I say it? perhaps it's like celebrated at some point because, well, they do it on the basis of, well, it's love. So yeah, but here in Malaysia we understood that as a big no, because in our religion, in Islam, it said that it is prohibited to do so. It is haram, which also means that morality is also affected by a lot of things. For example, here in Malaysia, our morality is affected by our religions. Okay, so now it goes back to the question of what else affects our morality and our judgment of what is right and what is wrong. So just now I mentioned about religion, and now we have 7 more of what will affect our moral compass. Okay, so now the first factor that will affect our morality and moral compass, it is the consequences. It talks about how and what will happen if the person do or do not do the action. So for example, if someone were to rob a bank, he might not proceed to rob the bank because he think of the consequences that might happen after, which is getting jailed or getting caught by the police and etc. The second factor would be their emotions, which is how will they feel about their decision afterwards. For example, if you were to decide whether to treat your friend to a meal or not, and then you thought to yourself, oh, if I treat them to a meal, then I'll probably feel happier because I did a good thing today. Okay, so the third factor that affects your moral judgment is the situation, which means the background of the situation and what led to that situation. So for example, if a woman is caught to be stealing formulated milk at the supermarket, well, at first you might regard her as someone that is morally wrong, someone that is doing something wrong and guilty. But then when you learn that she's actually doing that because she has no money and she has a baby to feed, well, then your sense of judgment might change. The other factor would be the rules and law, which means that any actions that is against the rules or law, well, you might see that as morally wrong. For example, killing or murdering someone. The next factor would be authority. So say that someone is older than you or more experienced than you, and they order or force you to do something, then you might deem that action as morally right or morally wrong if they tells you to avoid that actions. And the next factor is the common practice. It is the question whether everyone is doing it or not. For example, being in a relationship. In a sense that, well, you see other peoples around you having their um, love of their life, and then you also feels that, oh, perhaps it is morally right to also have someone as your companion, when in our religion I believe that being in a relationship is haram. And the last but not least is the factor that is the conscience. And it is something that tells you whether your actions or judgment is right or wrong. So you just like trust your guts and everything. So as a conclusion, when it comes to morality, we have 3 types of people. The first is we have the immoral person, we have the moral person, and we also have the immoral person. And on the other hand, we have a special being, I would say, which is an amoral person, which means that he or she have no regards whatsoever about what is right and what is wrong, and just do whatever he or she likes. And that is all from me, Fatma Zahra binti Abdul Rashid, about the concept of morality. So I will pass the floor to Brother Iman to explain about his own subtopic.
Thank you, Sister Fatma Zahra, for the explanation of morality. Now let us moving on to the last subtopic, which is harmonious personality. To understand what is harmonious personality, it is important for us to recognize first what is not harmonious personality, or we call it as corrupt moral character. According to Plato, there are 4 types of corrupt moral character, which are themarchic character, oligarchic character, democratic character, and the last one is tyrannical character. The first corrupt moral character is themarchic character, in which Plato describes this character as a combination of good and bad features. When it comes to choosing the leaders, the democracy people prefer to choose individuals who are high-spirit and simple-minded, as they focus on who are better suited for war. This is because the governor of democracy value power rather than intellectual means. For example, they seek to attain power through military conquest and the acquisitions of honors. Besides, they also have doubt to please the thinkers or individuals who are knowledgeable in position of power. This reflects how they neglect the intellectual values. Moreover, the other characteristic of democratic character is athletic. It proves the reason why democratic governors will apply great effort in gymnastics and the arts of war. The second corrupt moral character is an oligarchic character that is exercised by oligarchies. So, who are the oligarchies? Oligarchies are the members of the ruling group who are wealthy and exercise their power through their wealth. Okay, the first characteristic of an oligarchic character underlined by Plato is greedy. Since oligarchies are business-oriented, they only focus on making money and profit, and their motivation is placed on the basis of appetite and desires. It may sound good because they are optimistic, as they know what their target is. However, to attain that target, they tend to violate the law. Besides, they also share the same personality like themarchic characters, which is being too ambitious. While themarchic characters seek for power, the members of oligarchy crave for fame and honor. However, when things do not work the way they plan, they tend to become easily frustrated and violent, which is the second characteristic of an oligarchic character. Consequently, they attempt to overthrow the ruling class, although they realize that their action will cause pain and suffering for everyone. It is pretty clear that members of oligarchy are materialistics. They live only to enrich themselves, and through their private means, they seek to fulfill only their most urgent needs. All these characteristics show that the members of the oligarchy are also poor competitors. The next moral corrupt character is democratic character. It is a character that promotes people are free to do what they want and live how they want. This is because democratic people believe that all desires and appetites have to be treated equally. According to Plato, desires are divided into 2, necessary desires and unnecessary desires. Necessary desires are the desires that we have out of instinct or desires that we have to survive. Meanwhile, unnecessary desires are desires that we can teach ourselves to resist. To explain further about democratic character, imagine there is a democratic rich man who is consumed with unnecessary desires. Plato believes that the democratic man will spend as much money on the necessary desires as on the unnecessary ones. Besides, he is more concerned with his money over how he can help people. He does whatever he wants, whenever he wants to do it. And furthermore, people who are displaying a democratic are versatile because they lack of principles. The last moral corrupt character is a tyrannical character, which is the worst form of man because he is the most unjust and the furthest away from any joy of the true kind. This is because he is consumed by lawless desires, which cause him to do many terrible things, such as murdering and plundering. He comes closest to complete lawlessness because the idea of moderation does not exist to him. The tyrannical man is ruled by one masturbation that controls all of his desires, and the object of masturbation may be sex, alcohol, or drugs. Other than that, money also enables them to be involved in masturbation. For example, if the tyrant spends all of his money and becomes poor, he will steal and conquer to satisfy his desire. This is why the tyrant always runs the risk of being killed in revenge for all the unjust things he has done, as he is unable to control his aggressive and inhuman desires. So, what makes an individual the just person? The answer is the combination of all of these 4 characteristics in the self, as it will lead to happiness. The first characteristic is temperate. This is because the just person will not be influenced by physical appetites and material desires. This is the reason why members of oligarchy are not just people, because their life goals are placed on the basis of appetite and desires, and to achieve what they want, they tend to violate the laws. The second characteristic is courage, because this will support the individual's judgment and decisions to act. The next characteristic is wise. This is because wise persons will govern the soul by reasonings. As a result, they will know what is best for each of the 3 elements of human character, which are spirit, appetites, and reasons. The last characteristic is just, so that there will be no inner rebellion or disorder of the soul, and only tranquility and calm. Moreover, a wise person does not allow the 3 elements soul to interfere with one another. To conclude the presentation, there are 3 important points that I want to highlight. First, reason allows us to acquire knowledge of goodness. Second, ignorance will lead us to moral corruption and unhappiness. And the last one is, knowledge will lead us to moral virtue as well as happiness. That's all from us. Thank you for lending your ears.